It's an ancient mystery dating back thousands of years. A body carefully prepared and hidden in a remote desert cave. Preserved for millennia in the dry desert dust. Lying beside textiles and weapons? An ancient warrior? A hunter? Who was this man? Now, forensic experts and anthropologists will use cutting-edge technology to examine this skeleton.
This individual was a walker.
Add muscles and tissues to this skull.
I mean, look at him. There's just an amazing story right there.
And unveil a lost face from the Bible. So this is amazing. The archaeologists who found this must have been astounded.
Yes. Imagine to yourself that you enter a cave, and inside the cave you find almost a complete skeleton, still wrapped with some kind of clothes, lying on a mat. It's almost complete. There are only few bones missing here.
Before Professor Israel Herskovits can give this skull a face, he must examine it for valuable clues for the reconstruction. What can we learn by examining his skeleton?
Well, first of all, we know that he was a male. I mean, judging from the shape of the pelvis, we know that we deal with a male skeleton. Mm-hmm. Usually, we try to judge the age of the skeleton based on this area over here, mm-hmm. and we get a lot of assistance from this part of the pelvis. So we estimated that this individual was roughly 45 years of age at the time of his death.
And was that old for the time?
It was very old. He was very old for his time.
So the Judean desert, that proved to be the best possible condition.
Yes,
for this specimen here.
Absolutely. Believe me, it's very difficult to find a skeleton in such good shape.
Archaeologists discovered this fully intact skeleton and the artifacts surrounding it in an ancient burial cave 3 kilometers northwest of Jericho. He was buried with 14 perfectly preserved artifacts, including a wooden bowl, leather sandals, a wooden stick, a reed basket and mat, and a kilt and sash.
These items were around his body, and you can see it is stained with the liquid of his body juice.
It's quite remarkable. On the kilt, you could see the sweat and the blood. You could almost see and feel the way this person lived.
You're right, because these special conditions of Judea desert preserved these items very well. So you can see the original color of the textile.
The remarkable quality and condition of the linens and other artifacts suggested to archaeologists that the remains were approximately 2,000 years old. They believed this desert man walked through the Holy Land around the time of Jesus, and that he may have been a warrior.
He was found with his very good belongings. His knife, a long knife, a blade.
Oh, this is so beautiful.
It is made of flint. It is very rare because of his size.
But the use of flint predates Jesus. Knowing that this is a weapon from the Bronze Age, archaeologists rolled the clock back for this possible warrior to 2,000 years before Jesus. And according to biblical scholars, this was around the time of Jacob and Esau, the twin sons of Isaac and Rebekah, the grandsons of the biblical forefather, Abraham. Jacob is described as a tent dweller, an urban man for his time. But Esau was a son of the desert, a hunter holding on to the old nomadic ways of life that were fading. Professor Herskovits believes this skeleton is from the same area the Bible tells us Esau lived and traveled.
He's a local boy, because if you look at the skull very carefully, you can see, first of all, look at the eye socket. You see very small, very low eye socket. And in between, there is a region that we call the orbital region. He had a very wide interorbital space over here, okay? This is very typical to the local population, which testifies he's not an intruder. He's not somebody who immigrated to the area. And this is important.
This is key information for facial reconstruction artists. Now they can determine ethnicity, skin, hair, and eye color. If they can prove these bones belong to a nomadic hunter and rebuild his face through facial modeling, it may give us a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to look into the eyes of a character like the biblical Esau.
The lower limb bones are very massive.
So he used these a lot.
Muscle markings are much more prominent, and you can see it here, how prominent the bony ridge is. Many of the muscles are attached to this crest, which testify that this individual was a walker.
So this gentleman covered a lot of territory on his feet.
Yes, not just walking a lot in a flat surface, walking a lot in a hilly surface.
Warrior or hunter? The thick leg bones could mean he lived a nomadic desert life, just as the Bible describes for Esau.
What's this? Looks like there's a big piece missing.
Well, a small piece of the bone was cut and removed for DNA analysis.
Were you able to extract a DNA profile?
It's still under process. We don't have any result yet.
But they did use radiocarbon analysis to date the bone material, as well as the linen fibers from the textiles.
The three peaks are so evident. We can have a very good sample for radiocarbon.
The results are extraordinary. The kilt is the oldest dyed textile found anywhere in the world. It turns out this desert man's bones are actually closer to 6,000 years old. That's before Jesus, before Moses, and before Esau. But it places our man exactly in a time of remarkable transition, one that would carry on directly into the days of Esau.
His bones date back 6,000 years to Chalcolithic times, just before the Bronze Age, which means he would have witnessed some sweeping changes in the way people were living. For thousands of years, warriors and hunters had ruled the world, but times were changing. The rise of agriculture was slowly replacing nomadic existence with rooted societies. This transition is well documented in the Bible.
From the earliest days of their youth, the twin brothers, Esau and Jacob, were very different. Jacob is the younger, described as smooth-skinned and cautious. But Esau is rough and shaggy, completely covered by coppery red hair. Esau has little time for village life and property, always away on a hunt. So when he returns to the village hungry, Jacob offers up a deal, and Esau agrees to give all his inheritance away for a bowl of lentils.
You know, Jacob, the word, the name, Yaakov, means the supplanter. He was meant to supplant his brother Esau and take over. And that's what he did.
Is it possible to view this story as a metaphor for what was happening in society thousands of years ago? This transition from the life of the hunter and gatherer to the life of the farmer and to sedentary societies.
I actually hadn't thought of that, but it seems like it does fit. It does fit, and of course, our ancestors did become more rooted.
This could be the skull of a man who, just like Esau, a nomadic hunter, believed his way of life would last forever. But these bones could also belong to a different rugged figure of the past, the warrior. Herskovitz believes his team can reveal who this desert man was. But before they can reconstruct his face, he must factor in a strange diagnosis.
He lost most of his teeth during life, and he had quite an advanced, what we call periodontal disease over here and over here. I mean, he had really bad gums.
So how would his poor dental health have affected his appearance?
Well, he had quite a bizarre expression on his face, because if you go back to it, you can see he lost his incisors, okay? Part of the bone that holds the upper lip was missing. Sometimes you can see it in old people's face that lost most of their teeth. You can see that the whole facial area under the nose has a very strange appearance.
Infection has destroyed some of the bone. but the skull's still in good shape for the forensic artists. Now, they must CAT scan the skull so they can rebuild the face. This scan produces a series of X-ray images combined to create a detailed 3D composite of the skull.
And the first thing we do, we re-examine the external surface of the bones to look for trauma or lesions.
The scan also allows them to look inside the skull.
What we will carry out now is a virtual surgery. You see?
Oh yeah.
He's cutting the skull.
It's the first time anyone has seen inside this 6,000-year-old head.
You see over here, he lost nerve.
And there's something that doesn't look right.
If you look on the right side, over here, there is something very strange.
There's a protrusion there, isn't there?
Yeah, there is some kind of bony overgrowth. It's quite impressive, and honestly, we are so surprised to see it.
So that's not normal.
Absolutely not. We didn't imagine that something was going on inside the skull. And look how thick it is on the right side.
A large bone deformity inside the frontal lobe suggests one thing.
I mean, there was some damage to the brain.
Nerve damage from an injury like this could have impacted the man's motor skills and mental abilities. It also may have affected his facial appearance.
How would this have affected his life? I mean, something this significant.
I'm not sure that I know and I can tell you exactly what is the proper diagnosis of it.
While the skull analysis continues, the investigation turns to the other clues found in the cave.
He was found also with a bow and arrows, and his bow was intentionally broken after his death.
Breaking the bow was an ancient practice considered symbolic of killing the weapon, an important item to be buried with its owner.
And are these the arrows that he would have used?
Yes.
Replicas of arrows?
Replica. He was probably a hunter. He used to hunt animals.
Orit believes that these could be the weapons of an ancient hunter, not a warrior. If so, these tools represent the world of Esau, a world that was eclipsed by his younger twin, Jacob. Esau's father, Isaac, believes he is dying. He must pass on the inheritance he received from his father, Abraham, which was blessed by God. He sends Esau out to hunt for his last meal and tells him that when he returns, he will receive the blessing. But Esau is oblivious to the grand deception playing out back home. Jacob, his younger twin, wants the lineage promised to the firstborn son. Taking advantage of Isaac's blindness, Jacob disguises himself as his hairy brother, covering his arms with goatskin. He brings Isaac his meal and asks for the blessing. When Esau returns to his father, Isaac tells him he has already given his blessing and cannot repeat the act. And so, Esau is tricked out of his father's land, the nation of Israel, and the promise of God. He is enraged. And Herskovitz learns that the head injury sustained by our desert man would have had a serious effect on his mood as well.
אז אם הפגיעה היא בצד ימין, אז אנחנו יודעים שפרונט על צד ימין משפיע על חוש הומור, כן? אז האיש הזה איש חסר חוש הומור. אז...
הגדרה נהדרת.
כן.
אם הייתה לזה איזושהי השפעה, זה הייתה יותר ברמה הקוגניטיבית, לא כל כך ברמה של החיי יום-יום, ברמה הפיזית.
So the head injury wouldn't have affected his appearance, but what caused it? Was it the result of a warrior's blow in battle?
אין הרבה אפשרויות. או שלא מאורע חבלתי, או שלא מאורע דלקתי. גם כשיש לך פגיעה חד-צדדית גדולה, אתה מצפה שגם המחצית גוף הקונטרלטרלית תהיה מושפעת.
כן.
אז כל הסימטריה הזאת לא קיימת בשלד, שזה מצביע שלא הייתה פגיעה בעצם מוטורית.
כן.
אוקיי, אז איזה פגיעה יכולה להיות באזור הזה?
אחד הדברים שיכולים להיות זה זיהום.
כן.
עכשיו, אתה רואה שפה כל החלק האלוויאולרי פה שהחזיק את השיניים החותכות הוא נספג.
כן.
יכול להיות שהיה מצב כזה, נגיד שהוא קיבל מכה פה בפנים בתור ילד, שהוא נפל, והשיניים האלו נוצר לו פה איזשהו זיהום, והזיהום פה קשור באיזושהי צורה למה שאנחנו רואים פה.
אתה אומר לי שיש פה סימנים של זיהום בתוך
כן, אתה יכול לראות את זה פה, כן.
The CT shows evidence that the injury was sustained over a long period of time due to severe infection, not trauma.
אז יכול להיות שהיה לו מתישהו זיהום שעירב את הסינוסים האלה.
By the end of this man's life, the infection had caused serious calcification in the sinuses, filling them up with bone material.
The frontal part of the face was infected. This type of infection can reach the frontal sinuses very easily, through the nasal cavity.
It's not a warrior's injury. The investigation is beginning to point toward the skeleton belonging to a desert nomad, just like Esau. But if this was the grave of a man like the biblical Esau, there should be evidence here suggesting a leader who was greatly respected. After all, in the tale of Esau and Jacob, it's God's prophecy that both brothers will give rise to great nations.
These sandstone cliffs are found in a region where the Bible tells us Esau eventually settled. He became father of the Edomites, meaning the red people, a nation closely associated with red hair, red skin, and red earth. In time, the Edomites would become blood enemies with the children of Jacob, the nation of Israel.
There is evidence of a mysterious ritual on every item discovered with our desert man's skeleton.
It is covered with ochre. Ochre is a red mineral which was found in Judea desert. The community covered all the items which was found with him, for example, his sandals, the mat, the kilt, are all covered with ochre.
Why would they do that?
It was a practice. We don't know exactly what was the idea behind it, but they really respected him.
This man was greatly venerated, maybe as a chieftain or even the forefather of a great nation. And the color red was obviously a strong symbol for his people, an ancient tradition carried through the ages by his clan. And in the desert landscape of Edom, for the coppery-haired Esau, red was also a symbol for his tribe. Here on a lab table in Tel Aviv, the discovery of a broken leg on this 6,000-year-old skeleton triggers a forensic autopsy. They turn the remains over to orthopedic surgeon Israel Dudkowitz.
Do we have any idea when that fracture happened in this gentleman's lifetime?
I would say that it probably happened about 3 months, plus minus.
3 months before he died?
Yes, basically, because you can see there is union if you compare it to the other ones.
Dudkowitz hopes to determine what physical condition the desert elder was in during his last days.
If you look at the X-ray, you may see that there is still not totally united. You can see here there is still difference between these two parts. It's not fully healed, not yet.
Now, doctor, would this injury have incapacitated him, or would he have been able to limp around?
Probably it was very hard to walk. There's no doubt it caused him pain, and he limped even after it healed.
But I'm wondering, could he walk for long distances with such a fracture?
Probably he would need something to help him, a walking stick after that.
Found the stick in his tomb.
So there is a chance that he used it. There is a chance that he used it. There's a good chance that he used it for walking.
It is made of olive tree. Olive tree is very, very strong, so he could use it for walking.
And the man's sandals offer another clue.
Was it normal for people to wear shoes back then? Did most people wear sandals?
Usually they walked without any sandals, or they walked with sandals made of basketry or reeds, leaves. But a sandal which is made of leather probably was very rare. And this sandal is the left sandal. This sandal has more wear than the other one. So you see this hole made by his walking.
It's most likely the result of a dragging gait. The broken leg and limp doesn't fit the picture of an intimidating warrior. This new evidence seems to point to a different profile, that of an aging desert nomad, perhaps a wounded hunter at the end of his days. And if we visited this man in his earlier years, we meet someone very much like the biblical Esau.
Esau represented the old world, Jacob, the new. And like our 6,000-year-old mystery man, Esau was navigating his way through changing times when people were becoming less dependent on the man with the bow and arrow and more on the man who could grow his own food.
Having stolen Esau's birthright, Jacob escapes his brother's wrath and settles far away in their uncle's village. He becomes rich breeding flocks, and Esau is forced to wander the desert lands of Canaan. He eventually arrives in the land of Seir. It's here that Esau begins building the nation of the Edomites. This skull just may offer a look into the eyes of a respected desert leader like Esau and lead us one step closer to bringing his face to life.
The first thing that we need to do after reconstructing the skull in the computer is to go over all the sutures, all the places where two bones are coming together to make sure there are not too large gaps between the bones.
Zvi Grinberg brushes up the 3D image created by the CT scans for the next step in our facial reconstruction.
Because this skull has gaps on the back of the head, we want all the parts of the skull to be connected.
Zvi virtually stitches the bone together so he can send the data to the 3D printer to create a complete skull. But this is not an ink and paper job. This incredible machine assembles the hundreds of cross-sectional layers from the computer imaging and prints them as glue onto successive layers of fine powder.
It is done.
It is done.
When the printing finishes, we have an improved physical rendering of the skull.
For me, it's done. Okay, we have a jaw and we have a skull, and they belong together.
I cannot wait to see this with skin and hair and tendons and muscle and...
Well, our mission is to bring him to life again after 6,000 years. Well, this is a 6,000 years old skull.
That's the oldest skull that I've ever reconstructed.
Well, it's a fascinating skull.
Police usually employ forensic artist Victoria Lywood when they can't identify victims' remains. But this cold case is her first to span 6 millennia.
You should realize that he died in quite an advanced age to his time.
Exactly.
Yeah, he was quite old, probably close to 45, 50 years of age.
Which is really kind of amazing.
Yeah.
Victoria will take Professor Herscovitz's printed skull and start sculpting a face for our desert man.
When you were looking at the skeleton, did you find that he had been very active and muscular?
He probably was bones and muscles.
Up until what period do you think that he was that active and that muscular?
He had to work till the end. There was no what we call free soup, you know.
Well,
you have to work for it, and you have to gain it. I mean, in a society 6,000 years ago, you have to be productive.
Right.
He was active because we could see that he had a fracture on his fibula of the left leg, but he was walking on his fractured leg, implying that he had to go out. I mean,
Right.
he couldn't stay at the camp resting and waiting for other people to take care of him. I mean, he had to go out. He had to do his work.
Victoria uses details like these to inform her reconstruction, from how deep she makes the fatty tissue to how weathered she textures the face.
Now, you put the mandible back, you can see that he had quite a small face. Because he's lost all his anterior teeth, in the upper anterior teeth, he had the face of an old person. Right. Which implies, you know, that the mandible was slightly protruding.
Well, I'm going to be working with the muscle attachments here in this area. And I think that, in combination with these canines here, is going to give him a little bit of a square here.
Right. Yes, I agree with that.
So would you suggest a Mediterranean-type skin tone for
yes.
him?
I would say it's a brownish, light brown,
Okay.
light brown skin.
And this is going to be such an interesting nose. You can see where the right side is much, much smaller. That was the way he was breathing, so his septum must have been deviated.
Yes, yeah, his nose was quite asymmetrical
Right.
in appearance.
Exactly. Well, I can't wait to see what he's going to look like.
Me too.
It'll take Victoria many hours of sketching and sculpting before she reveals this man's face.
And I really think that little tooth there is going to stick out.
But the evidence supporting his life as a nomadic hunter, not a warrior, is rapidly building. Hai Ashkenazi has spent many hours analyzing the desert man's artifacts.
I think he was a nomad. He was a pastoral nomad, which means he was a herder. He had a flock of either sheep or goat, maybe both. And he moved around. He moved between the desert and also in the mountains next to it, either in Jordan or in Judea and Samaria. I think the bow and the arrows, that's the reason they called him the warrior in the beginning. And I think that the bow was not a real efficient bow. The bow is pretty short and the arrows had no arrowheads. So I think these arrows were used to hunting a small and fast game, like birds.
Hai explains all the items are made from lightweight material, designed for easy packing and carrying.
All the material, the bow, the wooden ball, for instance, made of woods that are not found in the desert.
So it either speaks to a man who traveled quite a bit or had connections, and he was able to get these items.
Yeah. Pastoral nomadism at this period starting to a bit fade away. Still, there were nomads, and not everybody turned into a farmer, but they were less and less important in the economy.
It sounds like the personalities of the herder and the farmer are personified by Jacob and Esau.
The story of Jacob and Esau is kind of a reflection of the conflict between herders and farmers. Farmers being settled down, have their own plot. They put a fence around it. They don't want your sheep to go and eat whatever you grow there. So then you have to go other place if you are a herder.
We can't quite say for certain yet whether our 6,000-year-old skeleton belonged to a warrior or nomadic hunter. But we do know that both our desert man and Esau lived to be very old men.
The average adult has 32 teeth in their head. This guy, not even close.
Like Victoria Lywood, Greg Mahoney will also recreate our ancient man's face, only he'll do it virtually.
Okay, so we're gonna put muscles on the skull, and the skull, given the state that it's in, presents us with a number of challenges. We can still see our attachment points where the muscle is gonna attach to the skull, but it definitely is not as straightforward as some of the other skulls that I worked on would be.
Given the challenges, the transition to a fully reconstructed face like Esau's won't happen overnight.
I'm trying to shade his mouth so that it looks like the bone is missing in the middle and that he has these fangs on the outside.
Victoria has almost completed her post-mortem sketches of our 6,000-year-old desert man.
I'm working on the side and the frontal at the same time, back and forth, in order to get the same features in the front and in a profile view. Then we have a good idea of his face. Now, the reason I'm doing these drawings is I'm using this as a blueprint for the 3D model that I'm going to make.
But before she can start covering the 3D skull with clay, she needs to create 2D X-rays.
The problem that I have that the animator or Greg doesn't have is that he can see through his sculpture. So my sculpture, of course, I can't see through that. So with these blueprint drawings, I can always take this paper away and check back to see where I am, if I've lined up properly on all my spots. One of the distinctive features about this man's mouth are the placement of his teeth and the loss of bone. He has basically just bottom teeth. On this side of his face, the bone has disappeared. The teeth have all been gone for a long time and the bone has shrunken. I look at the picture, I can look at the bone work, and I can see whether I'm in the right direction or not on the 3D model.
Over in the virtual realm, Greg completes every stage of the process with just one tool. But he still faces the same challenges Victoria has when it comes to the desert man's mouth.
This skull of a 45 to 50-year-old is not something that I'm used to seeing in a contemporary context. Most people don't have this much tooth loss. This guy has lost about half of his teeth. He's got no teeth in the bottom part of his jaw on his right side, and the top side he's got no teeth on the upper part of his jaw, and he's got no frontal incisors, there's no teeth along here. And when those teeth disappear and we don't have a dentist to fix it, that bone starts to erode away, it starts to disappear, and as it does, our face starts to sort of cave in on itself. So the fact that he's got no teeth up here means that his top lip is going to sink in, his nose is going to sink in with that. It's all connected, it's all related. So you can't adjust or touch one part of that skull without it affecting another. So we're basically going to let the skull tell us what to do.
Greg can import the majority of the muscles he uses from a forensic library.
So here we see the temporalis muscle. This is the muscle that sits up here, and it connects down to our jaw and helps us open and close our jaw and chew. So we're going to port that from a file so we don't have to make these muscles each time. What I then have to really just do, pay attention to, is making sure that they connect into the proper spots, that they're the right size, and at the right angles. And I can now drag this piece until I have it touching the spots where I want it to touch. Now this is going to connect into this part of the jaw right here, right up top here. If you look at it from the side, you can see that this is sticking off the skull. I need to bring that down so it makes contact with the skull. So here I can rotate it in any degree that I need to. So I'm just going to do this until I get it conforming to the shape of that skull. It's about there. Come back to this side view and pull it out a little bit more. And there we go.
It's not that simple for Victoria. She must roll out, cut, and then mold each muscle onto the skull. But not before she meticulously glues on tiny depth markers for reference.
This signifies the depth of the muscle and the skin and the fat that's on the face. I'm using tissue depth measurements taken from contemporary Egyptians using ultrasound. So at each one of these points, somebody took an ultrasound measurement on a living human being. The problems that we have here is that the tissue depth measurements that have been studied have all been studied on people that are in perfect health, no anomalies, no broken teeth or broken jaw bones or anything like that. So those facial features have to be modified according to him because he is not a standard study.
It's a painstaking process, but it's been 6 millennia since anyone has seen the face of this possible hunter from the Holy Land.
So while there are clearly, certainly many more muscles in our face, these are mainly the muscles that we need to focus on for facial reconstruction.
Every layer of muscle and tissue added reveals more of a hardened and weathered face. Whether warrior or hunter, it would have been a tough living. But the face emerging would have been his at the very end of his career. After he had lived well beyond the deaths of his peers, perhaps after many wives, after fathering many children, and after leading many men. Perhaps like Esau, who is now a popular leader in the land of Seir. He thinks it's time to visit his brother Jacob and finally settle their long and bitter feud.
Jacob receives word that his brother is coming to meet him with 400 men, and he shudders at the thought. The night before he's about to meet his brother, he has a dream. And in the dream, he is wrestling with an angel that won't let him go. Who is this angel? His alter ego, his conscience. As the sun rises, he grasps the angel and won't let him go. He says, "Not before you bless me." And the angel says, "Okay, from now on, you will not be known as Jacob. You will be known as Israel. For now you have wrestled with God and man, and you have prevailed." And then he gets up in the morning and meets his brother.
And Esau, the weathered hunter, forgives his brother. But a peace between brothers does not mean a peace between their nations. There will be future conflict. Jacob's Israelites against Esau's Edomites. But although Esau carried weapons, he was not a professional warrior. And it appears that's exactly what these bones are telling Professor Herskovits about our 6,000-year-old man.
And you would expect from a warrior to have a very developed, being very muscular, especially, at the shoulder girdle and the upper arm. And you can see for yourself how slender the arm is. If you take the humerus, for example, there are almost no muscle marking on the bones. Muscle marking are the places where the muscle are attached to the bone. If you have prominent muscle, then you can see on the bones very developed muscle marking. But you see that the surface is very smooth. So there are almost no evidence for muscle marking. They are the least developed muscle marking that I've ever seen.
Really?
I don't believe this guy was a real warrior.
So we can now say that this man was not a warrior. Our forensic team is rebuilding the face of a rugged desert nomadic hunter, just like the biblical Esau.
This particular subject has been quite weathered and haggard, and what we need to do now, though, is smooth that out because that's a bit too unsettling for human skin. So let's give it some smoothness.
The skin is going to drop and sag, and this unique jaw that he has and teeth are going to be modified. We're going to see creases in his eyes, squinting into the sun, lines here, forehead lines. That's the goal, to get him to look as he should have looked when he was alive. Now, as soon as I get them on, then I'm going to thin them down to make them look human. But all of the basic components are there in order to make an ear. A standardized way of deciphering the length of the ears is to measure the length of the ear and the length of the nose. Yes, okay, at this point, the ears are a little too big for standardization, but all of this down here, this is going to be trimmed up.
Victoria and Greg are using very different tool sets to reconstruct our desert hunter's face. However, the methodology behind the tools is remarkably similar. Even if Greg does have the option of adding a personal body part now and then.
These shoulders are actually my scanned shoulders, and I am the same age as this guy. On the younger side, anyways. I'm not 50. So we're taking my shoulders. Given that he's had a hard life, we'll put some wear and tear on there. So let's edit that piece as well. And obviously, we've got a piece that we need to add in underneath the chin here. Typically, we look at bringing that straight back. It depends on the angle of the jaw here, whether we have it raised up or whether we have it come back. All right, so we're just gonna make that piece from scratch. We'll add a new piece. So we're gonna start just behind the chin here. So if we're looking at it from the side, you can see what I'm doing is creating this part of his chin underneath here. So we'll do that for both sides. So once we get this roughly in place, what we start to do to give him that age is we start dragging this, down a bit. Now that's a bit extreme, but we're gonna just start settling things down in a bit to reflect this guy's age.
Greg's in the final stages of his reconstruction. He's combined all the muscle, tissue, and skin systems, with the exception of the elder's complicated mouth.
So what I've wound up having to do is split this into two parts, because what I wanted to do is set this top lip further in, sinking in as we would see for somebody who has no front teeth. This top lip initially was out here. Let's activate that piece. It would have been even further out. Let's bring it further out. So that would have been where that mouth would have looked in profile. And then we're gonna take the tug tool as we've used in the past and just sink it back down in there to where it belongs, with a skull with no front teeth. So there we go. There's our mouth. And we can bring up the other pieces that we've since got sorted, and we can start seeing our subject really start coming together. Now there's plenty of other detail work that we still need to do here, but essentially what we've got here is the final facial reconstruction. I think he looks fantastic.
Greg completes the final detail work, adding fat pads underneath the eyes, as well as creasing and aging the skin. And after several hours...
So that's it, done and dusted, ready to go off to Steve.
He's ready to deliver his model to digital artist Stephen Taylor.
So this is very exciting. I've gotten Greg's first draft. Greg's done an amazing job putting him back together. He's such a distinctive character. I mean, right off the bat, as soon as you look at him, you can see, look at his jaw, how it's slid over to the side, and just looks like there's an interesting story to this guy's life. I'm gonna clean it up and get to work. know, this guy's gonna have a lot of skin damage and a lot of story in his face, and so I need millions of polygons of geometry in order to make that happen.
He shrink wraps his mesh around Greg's model to mold every detail that Greg extruded from our desert man's skull.
So one of the things that I'm really trying to be careful of is to preserve Greg's forensic reconstruction, especially in the areas where I know the skin and the bone are in close contact.
He spends many hours detailing the skin, painting pores, and pushing folds.
So I have some good reference of men from the Middle East, close-ups of areas of skin with sun damage and age damage. And what I'm doing is trying to create a composite of all of that information. Things like the nose are gonna have more damage, the brow, the cheeks, gonna have little pop vascular systems. All this little intricacy is gonna add life to the final image.
And Steve doesn't just color and texture the surface, he goes under the skin.
This next layer is going to be a deep subsurface layer, and so when the light comes in and hits areas like the nose, the lips, and the ears, it wants to shine through, just like when you press your finger up against a flashlight in a dark room. So anywhere where there's soft tissue and light would make its way through, I'm going to go ahead and paint really super saturated color.
In Montreal, Victoria's working on a 6,000-year-old hairdo.
It's a lot of hair for a 50-year-old man. I think it needs to be thinned, and I need to make that beard. And the only way that I can do that is by making some silicone implants. I'm going to be implanting hairs in silicone pads that I place inside his face, and using those implants to anchor the actual hair and mustache, beard, as well as the sideburns, and I have to make them in this area. Then I'm going to work on the skin texturing, eyelashes, and eyebrows. I would say it's going to take me at least a week.
The desert hunter's hair is just as difficult to create in the virtual salon.
Facial hair like this guy's beard is going to be really tough to get right. It's just a lot of work, a lot of going back and forth. Pretty tedious work, but you know, the reward is pretty great because when you get it right, it really helps sell that final image and bring him to life.
It'll take Steve 2 days to build the hair systems. Meanwhile, Victoria's on to the final detailing.
I'm just trying to accentuate some of the creases and wrinkles in his face, trimming his mustache to expose his mouth a little more, because that is one of the most distinctive features that this fellow has. And I'm using this little technique, putting water in the beard, because I think that the poor fellow's gonna be a drooler.
The hair and beard are almost 100% complete now. Got the right amount of frizz in the hair. It's the right type of curl. It's the right density. So I'm gonna add some gray hairs throughout. I'm gonna add a few gray hairs in here, making sure that there's some gray in the beard. And we're gonna move on to building the shroud. So first, I'm gonna twist up a piece of fabric and have it on my desk so that I have something to really reference. It's gonna wrap loosely around his neck, knot up in the front, and cover this shoulder here.
I'm just putting a little baby oil in his eyes just to give him a little sparkle. When I first saw the skull in the anthropologist's laboratory, I didn't imagine this particular face. But it is something special to be able to see how this fellow looked 6,000 years ago.
6,000 years ago, this was the face of a nomadic hunter at the end of his days. His death, a metaphor for the changing times, wanderer to villager. His body respected as a chieftain and entombed in a cave. By gathering all the evidence pertaining to this hunter, we've been able to give him a face, a proxy to the biblical brother Esau, the son of the desert, the forefather of the red people, the Edomites, a tribe that disappeared almost 2,000 years ago. Now, for the first time, we can look into the eyes of the lost hunter from the Holy Land.